Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to another Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo spoiler summary for Chapter 9, and I just have to say, we are working with some raw translations here, so keep that in mind when we're going through this chapter. I'm going to do my best to include any and all dialogue and scenes that I feel are important. The best thing that you can possibly do to make sure you're getting the best possible information is to always support the official release. This is not a market substitute, I want to make that very clear, and I am only giving my commentary, review, and reaction of the new information of the chapter that is out in the world today. That being said, obviously this chapter is picking up of the flashback that we left off on last chapter, with this being part 2 of Doula's story. We learned so much about the Sumerian people, not just their religion, their traditions, but also the things that occurred prior to this and the secrets and conspiracies that led to the Lumerian people being in the situation they are now. But we're gonna go ahead and get into it, so hit that like button, subscribe if you don't want to miss any future updates on this series or any others you may read weekly. Follow me on Twitter or any other socials just to make sure you don't miss any other updates, and let's get right into it. The chapter opens up with a quick piece of lore in regards to the Sumerian people's third eye. Obviously, we know that the Sumerian people are sorcerers, quote unquote, and they're able to use cursed energy. However, the third eye is a different, irreplaceable weapon for the Sumerian people entirely. It gives them a lot of power and is seen as a symbol of strength. However, something that the Lumerian people have very unique to them is their ability to shed tears from their third eye due to it being able to feel their deep emotions. This usually only tends to happen when a Kalian dies, one of their sacred beasts and a figure of their religion. This also tends to only happen when they are either born or when they die as well. Usage of the third eye can tend to drain a lot of energy though. As we catch back up to where we were last chapter with the Kalian eating the Descante chief's daughter, while we don't actually see this event occur, it is very clear that the Descante are upset about this. However, instead of all-out war, it's very common for the Descante tribe to settle things through traditional one-on-one trials by combat. They've already been issued a challenge for a duel, and according to some of the older Lumerians in the tribe, this is a very common practice that occurred even before the Lumerians lost their original village. As on Samuria, those with power usually hold the most authority. Because the Lumerians have such a deep connection with their cursed energy and their third eye, they have very commonly been the strongest, but the same is for the Descante, who also hold the same belief that the strong are the most righteous in this world. Both the Descante and the Lumerians now have to choose a champion to fight on this one-on-one duel, and only the winner will earn the right to leave freely, and the loser must accept any and all crimes and penalties that are given unto them for the act. Cross and Maru are very unfamiliar with this practice since they're so young, but a lot of the older people in the tribe mention that this happened all the time before their village was destroyed. However, apparently, very commonly, Doula was the champion for the Lumerian people, and he almost always won these tournaments, even when the Descante war chief would take part in the battle. The Lumerians constantly praise Doula for this, and Cross and Maru are shocked to hear it since they never heard any of these stories before, but apparently, a lot of warriors from all over are scared to enter the Descante tournaments, but Doula was never afraid and always showed the Lumerian strength no matter what. Doula is upset about this bragging and tells everyone to stop, and Cross wonders if the duel can be refused, wondering why Doula would keep something like this from him and Maru for so long. But the messenger of the Descante mentions that refusing a duel is even worse than losing, as it's seen as a great disrespect, making Cross realize that losing a duel and refusing one can potentially be the exact same thing. Doula accepts the duel, knowing he's the best opportunity the Lumerians have to fight. And as we cut to the day of the duel, we get a brief narration of Cross's thoughts once again, dictating how he felt during all of these things happening before him. And he mentions the energy that he felt, as well as everyone in the crowd around him on the Lumerian side knew instantly, as if their hearts were being ripped out, their limbs stolen from them, and their minds scraped away. Cross says he'll never be able to forget the dreadful feeling as all of them look down at Doula facing Dborah, the Descante representative in this duel. With the mass potential and aura emanating off of this demon, Cross yells to Doula from the sidelines, telling Doula that they have to just run, that Doula will definitely be killed if he fights in this battle, telling Doula no one will blame him for running and that everyone is already grateful to him already. He's done enough and that doesn't have to change now. But Doula cuts Cross off and tells him to stop, walking up to and approaching Dborah as if they were old friends, and telling Dborah that it's been a while. This dialogue does seem to be a little shaky, so definitely keep that in mind. However, What we do get from this conversation seems to be that Doula and Dborah do actually have some kind of respect for one another, to the point that while Doula, as always, is happy-go-lucky and cheerful to see an old friend, Dborah is actually very upset to find out that he's the one that might have to kill Doula, respecting him not just as a fellow warrior, but in some ways sharing Doula's ideals, admitting he has no choice but to fight due to the orders he's been given, making Doula assume the chief most likely has one of Dborah's family members as a hostage. Doula tells Dborah not to worry, and he has to do what he has to do, but at the very least, he wishes to speak just a little bit longer to all of the people and all of the tribes that are watching today, which Dborah agrees and offers his friend one last respite for. Doula addresses the entire crowd here, admitting that there's always been a wall between the Lumerian people and the rest of the Sumerian tribes. All of this has been due to the religion known as the Carian Sacred Beast religion. But Doula unveils a long-living conspiracy that has been kept under the rug for almost 10 years now, revealing that the original reason why the Lumerians were kicked out of their homes and killed in a religious war wasn't actually due to the Kalians at all. In actuality, the Lumerians had nothing to do with the Kalians eating an original chief's daughter 10 years ago. In fact, the Discante were invading the Lumerian land to seize Muru mines. Keep in mind, this might be the wrong word, but essentially, just to give you an idea, these Muru crystals, or whatever they will be called in the official translation, are essentially stones that wield cursed energy, more than the average human being would. And we'll see later on in the chapter how significant these rocks are. But just keep in mind that the mines that the Discante people were trying to invade held very strong, powerful, cursed objects that can give anybody a massive amp in cursed power. So the truth is, since the Discante tribe has long profited greatly from mining Muru, and when they ran out, they started to invade and mine where they shouldn't have been mining, the incident 10 years ago, as well as potentially the incident that happened just recently, was actually due to the Discante meddling in affairs and trying to steal from the Lumerians in the first place. The Kalians, while sure never hurting the Lumerian people, are only acting hostilely because the Discante are offending the Lumerian people and their land. Before Doula can reveal everything though, as him and the chief lock eyes, he can tell that if Doula says any more, he's gonna be killed on the spot, and he wants to keep the microphone for right now. So instead, he moves on, because we know that Doula prefers peace rather than rehashing the past. He prefers moving forward and progress, and he reveals that wars are always began because of greed and ambition. You can spin it as a holy war or a religious war as much as you want, but that only downplays everything in the eyes of other nations that are looking on them, having people turn their back on the Kalian faith, and not just that, the Lumerian people, due to making them seem like they're not budging, when in actuality, the Discante, if they never tried to steal what wasn't theirs, would have never lost the people that they lost in the first place, proving that coexistence was possible if the Discante weren't trying to take what wasn't theirs. Doula reminds everyone that religion should never be a doctrine for war, but it's supposed to be some grand cultural idea of peace for everyone. And the reason why the Lumerian people refused to exterminate the Kalian wasn't because they held the religion so much in high regard, but because of what their religion was meant to represent: the peace, the faith of believing everyone can exist together and live in harmony. As Lumerian people, they're no different from all of these other tribes. So instead, we should all be helping one another as neighbors, as fellow people and Sumerians, not fighting. And as Doula's speech winds down, the Discante chief cold-heartedly tells Dborah to begin the battle, as everyone immediately has shivers sent down their spine. We cut to a bloodied and incapacitated Doula on the ground, just barely hanging on to life, as Maru can't bear to watch anymore and tries to jump into the ring to save him. Cross calls Maru an idiot and slams him into the ground, asking him what the heck he's thinking, when Maru begins to start yelling at Dborah, asking him what Doula meant when he called him a neighbor. Cross tells Maru to shut up and to stay out of this, but Dborah, once again having respect for Doula, calmly walks over to the twins and begins answering Maru's question, saying that neighbors are comrades who understand why the things you treasure are so important to you. Or at least I think that's what Dborah is saying here. Again, these might be a little bit rough, keep that in mind. Once again, time moves forward. We are all mourning the death of Doula and going through his funeral. Looking down on Doula's dead body, Cross thinks back to all of the times that they had back then when Doula was being ambitious about coexistence. And Cross, looking down upset, realizes that coexistence is impossible, becoming the cold-hearted, prejudiced man that we know today. And left with nothing, the Lumerian people wonder what they're going to do, because by tomorrow morning, they'll have no home at all, because the canal they just spent all of this time building will belong to the Discante, and essentially their lands are going to dry up again and disease will spread, and children and women might have to be evacuated. Some of the Lumerian people think that if they're just gonna die anyway, they might as well fight and stand off against the Discante till their last breath. Cross says that's just how warriors are, but Jabaloma interjects and says, actually, warriors weren't people who just died in fighting, but they were people who were chosen to protect the women and children and stand and be alive for safety. Cross wonders if the other clans might help, hearing from Doula that that kind of thing can happen, but a lot of the Lumerians admit they really don't know if they're going to be able to even see sunrise tomorrow. However, right as they're at their lowest, Dborah walks up with a fellow Discante tribeman, interrupting the Lumerians and telling them that Doula actually left something behind, despite them not being happy to see the man that just killed their hope and dreams. Dborah brings Cross, Maru, Jabaloma, and some of the other tribesmen to the canal, where they originally started this whole journey, and suddenly they feel a crazy aura, and they're all surprised. The entire canal, at least the original place that they started at, is filled with Muru stones. And Cross thinks back and when Doula told them specifically not to touch the rocks in a certain area. Cross and all of the Lumerian people beginning to realize that this was Doula's catch-22. He was hiding all of these Muru stones from the Discante as a savior plan for the Lumerian people, knowing that one day a lot of this might be necessary. And by hiding it in Kalian territory, the Discante scouts were unable to reach it, which, if you're able to connect the dots here, this proves once again the Discante people were trying to get into these Muru mines. So just like 10 years ago, the Kalians attacked the chief's daughter because the Discante were trying to steal Muru from this specific spot. It's also why Dborah knew where this spot was and brought it to them from the beginning. At least that's the kind of story that I believe is being told here. But you guys can let me know what you think down in the comments. Realizing this major discovery, Cross once again thinks back to a time where Doula admitted the canal is the embodiment of the craftsman's hopes and dreams, and that he's gonna die someday, but the canal will still be here. It's not necessarily the canal that will make the difference for the Lumerian people, but it's the Lumerian people that will find the best way to use the canal to best serve them. Doula knows that right now the kids won't understand it, and hoping that later they do understand. And though Cross is kind of in disbelief, just thinking that all of this is amazing that Doula was able to do, Maru, who embodies the belief system that Doula always had, thinks that this is more than just amazing, because now they can prove the canal wasn't just for nothing, and that Doula really left them a legacy for the Lumerian people, as suddenly their cursed energy begins to respond to the Muru stones, and as Maru and Cross join hands, their cursed energy becomes so high purity it begins to fluctuate like a Dragon Ball Z aura. Maru turns around and calls out to the other Lumerians, telling them that they can use this power to potentially try and search for a new world, a place where all of the Lumerians can live in peace. And one of the people calls back and says no such place exists, but Maru, potentially using his cursed energy and finding the harmony of the earth, a place where they have cursed energy just like the Lumerian people, Maru says there is such a place that exists because he knows it and is able to connect and find it. The people are scared to leave Sumeria and go out to a completely new planet and world. However, Dborah tells them that before Doula died, he made a promise to him, telling Doula that he would protect everyone in the Lumerian tribe, assuring the Lumerian people that he will be joining them on this pilgrimage to help them. And using this insane strength of the Muru stones, Maru is able to create the spaceship that we see from the very first couple of chapters, yelling gleefully and telling the Lumerian tribe that it's time for them to go to a new world. And this chapter not only gives us a lot of information in regards to how all of this journey began, why there's only 50,000 Sumerians on the spaceship, because it is only the Lumerian tribe that is leaving. They have just lost their homeland because of the Kalian incident, when in reality the Discante once again just created their own own problem, which is why Cross says that it was all man-made. Their tragedy wasn't actually the sacred beast. It was the greed and arrogance of the Discante people. And this also shows why Dborah is with them, as this powerful envoy that is going to help them ensure that they can get on Earth safely, going out of his way against his tribe's better judgment, most likely, to help these 50,000 Lumerians escape from their world before it's taken over completely. The entire basis of the Lumerian people's exile was all a fraud on behalf of the Discante people, which I know is going to throw a wrench in all of the crazy comments that I was getting last chapter. But anyway, guys, let me know what your thoughts are down below. I'm excited to see, and I'm super excited for the official release, and also to see how we're able to get coexistence, because if Dborah isn't the major threat of the story, who is going to be our main villain? Let me know what you think, guys. Peace.